This video covers psychological development through adulthood all the way to dying and grieving the dead. This is the last video in this section on stages of life in this course, as well as the whole course. My name is Jouni Vilkka, and this is my channel, TFF Teacher from Finland. Consider subscribing and giving me a thumbs up. In the West, adulthood is defined by sociologists as involving 1. Being self-supporting, 2. Being married, 3. Having children, and 4. Having a career. This kind of adulthood is being postponed in the West more and more, while elsewhere, people we Westerners would consider children because of their age are already fulfilling the criteria of adulthood. The term emerging adulthood refers to the Western prolonged period when, instead of fulfilling those criteria, 20-somethings and older people are seeking their identities, looking for love, or just looking for job opportunities, which are drastically different now compared to how easy it was to get a well-paying job just some decades ago. Less than half of those surveyed between ages 20 and 30 considered themselves adults. The reason they give for not feeling like an adult include still studying for a degree, not having a job, or not even being in a serious relationship. Adulthood used to be divided into 3 stages: early adulthood from about 20 to the 40s, middle adulthood from 40s to 60s, better known as middle age, and late adulthood starting in the 60s. This last stage has been associated with being old, which again is associated with being frail and losing one's cognitive abilities. Because these days this kind of old age typically no longer begins when people are in their 60s, more recent researchers have started talking about a third age between middle age and an old age. This to me seems like a similar continuation as observed in the prolonged period of youth before settling down, getting married and so on. People in the third age seem much like middle-aged people, still living a very active life, not just encumbered by work if they have retired. They can typically be very active in hobbies and non-profit organizations. Many academic professionals continue their work well into their third age, for example. But even in the West, there are people who have lived harsher lives and may not be able to continue to live that actively. Aging is affected by genetics and the environment, after all. The term primary aging refers to the biologically, or rather genetically, driven aging, while secondary aging refers to the influence of habits and lifestyle on aging. For example, regardless of how long one has been smoking, there are always benefits to quitting that bad habit. The quality of available healthcare and especially social class are of great importance for how people age. Chronological age is not very important for the developments in adulthood, after 30 anyway, like it is for all the previous stages. Instead, what matters are the unique life experiences and choices of the individual. The part about choices might be mostly a Western thing, as the availability of options might not be there for people in all cultures. What defines adulthood, at least in a biological sense, is presumably the fact that physical maturation is complete. Unfortunately, the same is far from true about other forms of maturation. And I could go so far as to say that there are lots of famous individuals who have reached even an advanced age without ever really maturing. Anyway, people reach the peaks of their potential strength muscle mass, reaction time, and sensory abilities in their 20s. This is not the same as actual peak, because to reach the potential, one has to put in a lot of effort as well. But even if you haven't been very athletic in the past, it is still possible to get into a pretty good shape later than in your 20s. You will just never reach what you might have reached had you started at a young age. In other words, if you are young now, it might be a good idea to start working out. Gaining muscle mass, strength, and learning physical feats is easiest when you're in your teens or 20s. Mentally, fluid intelligence is also at its best in the 20s. Cognitive abilities in general will remain the same until late adulthood. Crystallized intelligence is likely to just keep improving until then. Reaching adulthood usually involves improved cognitive skills and the ability to apply post-formal thinking. It means critical, independent, reflexive thinking that applies metacognitive skills, such as being aware of possible biases, for example. It integrates abstract knowledge and experience and understands the nuanced nature of knowledge and how it can be relative to the relevant contexts in various situations. There can be several correct solutions to a problem depending on perspective, or none at all. All knowledge is understood to be incomplete. Reaching this level of thinking requires practice and the accumulation of quite a bit of knowledge, preferably starting in childhood. These are skills practiced at higher education, but can be learned without it as well. Early adulthood, for a Western person at least, ideally includes starting to live on one's own, studying and graduating, starting to work full-time, establishing a serious relationship, getting married, and having children. Many researchers, such as Erickson, Havikhurst, and Shanahan, have considered these to be the developmental tasks that belong in this transition into full adulthood. That is a lot of requirements around the same age. Around age 40, according to the research by Levinson, 80% of people experience some kind of crisis as they re-evaluate their lives and change what they consider important or interesting. This number seems high. Other researchers have suggested numbers as low as 26%. It has been suggested also that age 30 is more problematic for a lot of people, and that in fact there are generally no huge crises, but more of a steady progression as part of normal development. Of course, there are actual crises: loss of a loved one, loss of a career, facing a serious disease, and things like that, but those cannot be considered part of development. In middle age, physical abilities will begin to gradually decline. Getting more muscle mass and strength becomes almost impossible the older you get, and just keeping your muscle mass is difficult in middle age. It requires regular exercise, but loss of muscle mass can be resisted that way. We do all slow down with age though, as can be seen in the changes of our reaction times. The skin will start to get wrinkly, and eyesight will usually get worse. It is common for middle-aged people to wear reading glasses or varifocal glasses, like I do, because it is no longer easy for the eyes to adjust to different ranges. With simple glasses, the eyes have to work harder, which will be tiring. The problem is usually focusing in the short range, for example, accommodating to reading distance. This is called presbyopia, or age-related farsightedness. It is likely to get worse over the years. Risk of cardiovascular disease increases with age as plaque builds up in arteries due to diet and other life choices, especially for those who do not heed the advice of professional dietitians or other medical experts. Differences between individuals are big and not at all only due to their genes. Going vegan, or at least seriously reducing the consumption of animal products, especially red meat, would benefit people greatly, but most people are not rational enough to do so. It would also reduce the risk of cancer, which also increases with age and with the consumption of animal products. Even individual differences in personality seem to contribute to wealth. Various studies have tried to pinpoint the problem. Earlier, a popular theory suggested that a so-called type A personality, characterized by a high level of competitiveness and aggressiveness, was connected to higher rates of high blood pressure and heart disease. The theory has lost favor due to contradictory results in later studies, but a new suggestion has come up. This time the personality with the health risk is called type D for distress, as it seems that many negative emotions are connected to health risks. My recommendation is to try and live so that you can avoid strong negative emotions, limit the amount of stress you have to endure, and seek a life where you can be relaxed, calm, serene. Bones begin to lose calcium already at 30. As a result, they lose mass and become more brittle. This osteoporosis affects everyone, but is accelerated by menopause, so women are more likely to suffer the adverse effects and more likely to suffer from them at an earlier age than men. Risk of fracture after the age of 50 is serious, as the damage can be serious. Fractures in general are more serious for aging individuals than the young, who typically heal much faster. Women will go through menopause between 45 and 55 years of age. It will affect their estrogen levels, possibly requiring compensating treatment. Menopause can affect memory and mood. For some, menopause is a relief. I suppose at least there will be no worry about getting pregnant anymore. If you've undergone menopause, please do let me know about your experiences in the comments below. Weight gain is typical in middle age as well. Typically, men will gain more fat in the belly, while women in their thighs. Hair begins to turn grey, although that can happen much earlier as well, and hair loss is common. For some, these changes, or what they represent, can be so unpleasant that they want to hide them in various ways. I personally prefer to trim my hair short because I prefer that look over the thinning look, but that's just me. It may sound like growing into an adult, and especially to middle age, is nothing but loss and depressing decline, so I'll have to point out some positive things as well. It is common for young adults to suffer from depression and other mental issues, but often those pass by age 30. Afterwards, there will be typically an emotional stability. Adults will usually have learned not just good social skills, but mature coping mechanisms to help them deal with the issues life throws at them. They are likely to have social connections and can normally live independently, able to make a living on their own. In middle age, they may also have garnered some wisdom, and their knowledge of things, especially if they've kept studying, may be very high. Those who have children will have to go through a period of raising these kids, which can be very stressful. Afterwards, when those children have grown up, they will bring satisfaction and they can probably help their parents and at least provide a connection to a younger generation and new currents in the world the older generation might otherwise never hear of. It may be that this way raising children might make a person feel more connected to the wider world, which is usually a good thing for one's mental health. Those, like me, who choose not to have children, have far more time and money to spend in whatever way they prefer. Some form of generative behavior is good for one's mental health. Supporting good causes, giving to charities, and being active in many ways is easy and gives life purpose. Life satisfaction in middle age is connected to timing and success in the developmental tasks I listed earlier. Achieving them early or on time seems connected to satisfaction, while achieving them late or not at all to dissatisfaction. For example, not being able to graduate on schedule understandably causes dissatisfaction. Being able to combine work and family life productively is obviously nice. These are, of course, statistical averages I am referring to here. Not everyone wants to have children, for example. In general, one's own agency and ability to make one's own choices is important for life satisfaction. Generativity or productivity seems especially important for middle age, as Erickson claimed. This means being able to express one's own abilities and to give back to society. Not being able to do so can make one feel like a failure when life didn't work out as one would hope. This can understandably lead to depression. In late adulthood, decline continues, and while it might not be too bad in the third age, eventually it will most likely mean more decline in physical abilities, the senses, and most importantly for psychology, brain functioning. This last can be seen as memory loss, dementia. That term covers many forms of diseases, of which Alzheimer's disease may be the most common. Fluid intelligence at this stage declines faster than crystallized intelligence, and memories of youth can still be retained very well. Old people, I think, often enjoy reminiscing nostalgically, and they can be very useful informants for historians and cultural researchers. There are several causes for aging. Natural or primary aging begins pretty early but progresses slowly. It is caused by natural biological processes. The functioning of the organism slows down little by little, but irreversibly. Secondary aging is caused by circumstances such as physical illnesses or depression, and these can be recovered from. Tertiary aging means fast changes that sort of herald death, as usually death occurs within a year of these symptoms. Finally, there is also something called differential aging, which refers to individual differences in the aging process. A pretty tangible sign of aging is shrinking. People become shorter as they live past 60. The rate is 2 centimeters, about 4/5 of an inch per decade on average. Muscle mass and bone density are reduced, and together with a probable decline in balance, make falling down a real threat. This is especially obvious in places like Finland, where the ground is slippery a significant portion of the year, and it is also pretty dark for a large chunk of the year. The loss of bone density even means that resuscitating old people can be impossible, as their bones can easily break in a dangerous manner. Cognitive decline is not something that necessarily occurs to everyone the same way. Normal cognitive decline is not as significant as people often think. Those who have more cognitive reserves from actively improving their cognitive abilities by studying, for example, can function better and longer than those with less. They can show more resilience even to brain damage from injuries. Age-associated memory impairment, AAMI, is a mild weakening of memory that does not impair other cognitive abilities. About a third of Finns aged 60 to 80 have it. It is also normal for reaction speed and cognitive speed to be reduced. If your loved one begins to show symptoms of cognitive decline in middle age, you should perhaps get them to consult a physician because they might be suffering from an illness that can be addressed. Also, even natural decline can come in degrees. Those adults who engage in mentally and physically stimulating activities seem to be doing better than those who don't. So, as you grow older, it is recommended to stay active and keep learning new things. Use it or lose it applies not just to your muscles, but also to your brains, skills and knowledge. About half of 90-year-olds have dementia. That means half don't. Also, cognitive decline doesn't necessarily reduce the ability to function as much as you might think. It is not even common that full cognitive capacity would be needed in normal life. You can also learn to use your strengths to minimize the harm by compensating for your perhaps reduced speed by anticipating the next likely thing, and so on. Motivation and persistence can overcome a lot. You can change your environment to better suit your needs as well, which may be helpful. Social activities provide many advantages that may be especially beneficial in late adulthood, although are useful earlier as well. Not only do they provide an opportunity to use your social skills, they also provide a sense of emotional connection, which seems important for most people. Work and career may be important sources of meaning in life, and people tend to identify with their jobs and careers and with the groups or even companies they work with or in. That is, as long as they are content with those things. If not, for example, if you're unemployed, this can be a problem. If one is stuck in the mindset of seeking meaning through such things. When they retire, if work was everything for them previously, adjusting to the new situation can be difficult. Other important sources of meaning are typically found in family life and other relationships. A stable marriage contributes a lot to one's well-being. It is also possible to find meaning or purpose in activism, art and science, things that connect to good and greater causes than just one's own self-interest. It would be a good idea to get into such things earlier, but better later than never. Loneliness is often thought of as a serious problem for many aging people. Of course, people of all ages can feel lonely, but young people perhaps have more opportunities to change it. Loneliness can be physical, not having someone near you to interact with. It can be emotional, not feeling a deeper connection with someone else, even if there is someone physically close to you most of the time. It can even be existential, feeling empty, devoid of meaningful existence. A person can experience any combination of these forms of loneliness temporarily, and in old age it can include all of one's final years, leading to a sad end. But only a minority of old people, at least in Finland, report such experiences. An old person can be satisfied with their life, and they can perhaps more than at other ages reach not just for meaningfulness but also wisdom. One way to do that is studying philosophy, and I hope my courses can help with that. I will discuss wisdom in the final thoughts at the end of this video, as I think it should be one of the goals of human life. As you grow older, your interests may change because personality actually tends to change throughout life. There is a kind of maturing, so that impulsiveness is likely to be reduced, for example. I guess that is one of the reasons why people in most cultures think that old age brings wisdom. There are cultural differences, of course, in how old age is viewed and how old people are treated, and what a good old age is considered to be like. If you'd like to tell me how old age is seen in your culture, I'd appreciate a comment about that below. As one gets older, accepting one's life as something that cannot be changed and the inevitability of death are the main tasks. With acceptance comes integration, finding even new meaning to life. It is possible to see oneself as part of the chain of generations. Failing to accept reality may result in desperation and fear of death. There is not enough time to start a new life and to fix one's mistakes. The most common regrets old people seem to have are things they did not do, chances they did not take. They have urged young people to not make the same mistakes, but to take their chances. If you fancy someone, don't be too afraid to ask them out on a date. Take those classes at night school to get that degree, so you can quit that shitty job you have. That sort of thing. There will be the end of the line at some point. These days people live longer on average than ever before. Or perhaps we are already past that high point in that graph, but still a lot of people live to an old age and rarely die at home or work anymore. Hospice care is often needed, and it is found to be beneficial for both the patient and their family. Of course, there are still accidents and very rarely violent crimes that can cause an early and unexpected death, but usually the cause is a disease and death will be anticipated. There are stages of grief before the acceptance of one's own imminent death, as made famous by Elisabeth Kübler-Ross. Denial, anger, bargaining, and depression, after which finally acceptance comes. Most people close to death go through most of these stages, but not necessarily in this order. Some people may remain in denial, fighting for survival until the end. They may need that as a coping mechanism. It might be better to accept reality though. That way it is possible to prepare for the end. One important part of preparing for death is dealing with the fear involved. Psychologists have noted that as people grow old, the intensity of fear of death is reduced with age. It makes sense, of course, that as one grows older and older, the inevitability has to be grappled with. More and more of the people one used to know also die, and one may begin to suffer from various ailments and problems that often increase with age, making the end of life seem less unpleasant. After all, only the living suffer from such ailments. The dead no longer suffer. Of course, we should all prepare for death regardless of our age, because we might actually die at any moment. Having not only a last will, but also a living will, where instructions regarding end-of-life care are given, would be very useful. It would be an especially good idea to have your loved ones know your wishes in case something bad happens, not causing your immediate death, but incapacitation like a coma with little hope of recovery. If you would prefer to not be resuscitated in case you suffer cardiac arrest or something of the kind, you need to have that wish turned into a legal DNR order. How to do this may vary from one country to the next, so I can't give more advice on this here. If you are getting old and fear that you may be losing your cognitive abilities long before death, you should probably consider naming a trusted person, perhaps your own child if you have any, to take care of such things, and do this in the proper legal way as well. Also, if given time to prepare, one should make sure one's things are otherwise in order. Regardless of your age, it would be a good idea to list all the necessary information in a place that your loved ones can access. This includes information about your digital life as well, including your social media accounts and what to do with them. If you are, for example, diagnosed with an incurable disease, you will be able to prepare for your death and you can still be treated. Palliative care refers to the kind of treatments that aim to lessen any pain you may suffer. Your treatment is probably designed and decided upon at a hospital, but you don't have to stay at the hospital to receive treatment. At least in Finland, you can get the medicine at home, and treatments requiring nurses, for example to give you shots of strong sedatives, can be administered by a visiting nurse. At least this is the case in hospice care. This type of professional care focuses on both the dying individual and their family. The idea is to make the individual's death as good as it can be, to allow them to die well and with dignity. Usually, death at home or in a home-like environment is preferred, and it is also made possible by palliative care and visiting nurses. The patient and their family are given more control over the process than in ordinary treatments. For example, when my father died, he did so at home, where the whole family could be there to care for him as well as we could, with the help of visiting nurses. Death itself is not actually a simple thing from the scientific point of view. It is not clear when a person is dead, as death is a process, and all the organs in the body do not have to die for us to consider the person dead. The term clinical death means the lack of breathing and brain activity at the level of the cortex. It is possible to resuscitate an individual still at this point if the brain has received oxygen until very recently, within a few minutes. Remember that the heart does not have to pump of its own accord for the blood to transmit oxygen to the brain. This is why you should continue administering CPR for as long as you can. If revived, the damage to the brain will be much reduced with CPR. If the brain has not received oxygen for several minutes, brain death is likely. This means the lack of activity within the brain due to damage. It is possible for the body to continue living even without life support, even if much of the brain is dead, for as long as the brain stem still functions. If it is dead, the body can still be kept alive artificially, which only makes sense if some of the organs can still be retrieved in a healthy condition for transfer to a living patient. Social death occurs when the body is treated as a corpse, when death is acknowledged. As an example, when I saw my father pass away, I needed a health professional to tell me that he was really dead before I could consider him dead. The death seemed very clear to me when he stopped breathing, and I could not find a pulse nor see any signs of life in his eyes when I peeled them open, but at the same time I could not trust myself to be able to tell with enough certainty. His social death, for me at least, was possible only after a medical professional stated the obvious. Social death allows grieving to begin. John Bowlby and Catherine Sanders have formulated theories about the stages of grief that people go through when a loved one dies. Their theories are very similar, but because of problems typical of stage theories, I don't think it important to go through the stages as they have presented them. The thing is, the experiences of individuals vary, and these experiences and the emotions related to them might not occur in stages as they theorized. They might not occur in the same sequence, and not everyone experiences the same emotions. There is no proper way to grieve, as some people think. Some of the bereaved immediately go through great distress, but recover quickly. Others may suffer chronically for years. For some, the distress may be delayed until months or even years have passed when it finally hits. But some, in fact a surprisingly large fraction of people, don't seem to feel great distress at any point, even though they are saddened by the death. Rituals such as wakes and funerals can help family members and friends manage their grief. Such occasions also bring people together, enabling them to renew their relationships. The shared grief can help bind them together more tightly. While the death of a loved one is always a great loss, it is also worth remembering that, for example, to the widow or widower, loss can also lead to growth, independence, and new skills. This has been a rough sketch of the stages of life from before the cradle to the grave. Do you have anything to add regarding these stages of life? Any insights or experiences you wish to share? Let me know in the comments below. I have left out a lot, of course, because I wanted to keep this as a simple, popular approach to the subject of developmental psychology. I want to mention some last things though. One is about saying that age is just a number. I take it to usually mean that one's literal age doesn't matter, which is obviously not true. I mean, it matters in many ways, at least legally and socially. It is true that we don't often feel our age, and at least if we are healthy, we tend to feel younger than we are. Some middle-aged men may try to flirt with young women, perhaps partially because they don't understand what disgusting old creeps they are to those women. The chronological age, measured in years from birth, is just one of the concepts of age. Others include the biological, psychological, and functional age. Even if psychologically one feels like 20, one might functionally be clearly aging, having lost much of the stamina of youth and the ability to perform the things, mental or physical, that one was able to do when chronologically 20. It also would be socially weird for an old guy to try to speak like a young person. It is very likely that the old and the young live in very different cultural environments, so that at least the old will probably not understand much of what the young people are talking about and what important things they are dealing with and discussing among themselves. The other thing I wanted to mention or return to at the end is wisdom. As I mentioned, I think it should be one of our goals in life to attain wisdom. It would be easier to seek wisdom if we have an idea of what that is. So here's at least a starting point on our journey. According to researchers like Baltis and Stadiger, it is something that people find difficult to define or explain, but easy to recognize. So it is hard to put into words, but easy to point out when seen. But people from different cultures do seem to agree on 6 features that are at least part of wisdom. 1. Wisdom is about life and the vital issues relevant in the context of the actual circumstances of life. 2. Wisdom is best knowledge, assessment, and advice available. 3. Wisdom is a very broad, deep, and balanced understanding that is applicable also in special circumstances. 4. Wisdom is used for the good of others and possibly also oneself. 5. Wisdom unites mind and character. And 6. Wisdom is difficult to achieve but easy to recognize. Wisdom is social and has to do with interaction. It involves a series of decisions, for example, like this. 1. Recognition of a problem. 2. Defining the nature of the problem. 3. Seeking knowledge about the problem. 4. Seeking strategies for solving the problem. 5. Directing resources to solve the problem. 6. Adjusting the solution to the problem. And 7. Assessing feedback about the solution. A wise person should probably have a lot of knowledge about life and different circumstances of life. It takes time to amass such knowledge, so that is why young people are less likely than old people to be wise, although mere chronological age is not a very good indicator of wisdom. Doing the same thing over and over for years doesn't increase your knowledge or understanding much, although neither does just trying a lot of different things a little bit all the time. A wise person would know several different strategies for dealing with important issues in life. These could range from minor things like how to have conversations with different kinds of people, to ways of gathering information, planning and timing decisions, and so on. A wise person would know about the contexts of life and how they are related to social structures, historical contexts, individuals' development, and the individual's life story. They would understand the social expectations and the individual's own values and the potential conflicts between those. A wise person would understand the contextual and relative nature of values, goals, and preferences. They could contemplate the situation, actual or potential, of another person with a different background and their motives and values. A wise person would be aware of the uncertainties of life, the lack of an obvious or any perfect solution. They would not be afraid of the unknown or epistemic uncertainty, and would be able to function with what knowledge they have. This, incidentally, is often said to be what studying philosophy primarily teaches. If you want to try it, my very first course in this project is an Introduction to Philosophy and Critical Thinking. I hope you'll check it out. This video ends my introduction to developmental psychology. Thanks for watching, and please come back for more videos on my channel. Bye for now. If you wish to support my channel, please click thumbs up, subscribe, and share my videos. Any comments on the videos would also be welcome.